Thank you. We are going to call this meeting to order now. It is 7:07 on July 20, 2023, and this is a public meeting of the City of Portland Police Accountability Commission. If the Spanish language interpreter, Liz and Carolina, can please give the information on the Spanish language interpretation?
Buenas noches, esta es una reunión pública sujeta a la ley del Estado de Oregón y las normas administrativas de la ciudad de Portland y será grabada. Se dispondrá de interpretación al español para esta reunión. Al acceder a la interpretación en español, verá la señal de video de los oradores, pero la señal de audio será sustituida por la del intérprete. Para acceder a ella, haga clic en interpretación en los controles de la reunión de Zoom en la parte inferior de su pantalla y seleccione español. Gracias.
Muchas gracias, Carolina. The city also offers ASL interpretation, which is being provided by Maria and Jade. Please pin their video feed to see their interpretation throughout the meeting. The closed captioning is turned on in Zoom as another means of assistance, but please note that this is an automatic captioning services and is not always accurate. The city supports access to meetings of the Police Accountability Commission and can provide other language support as well. Please email in advance of future public meetings, either as a response to a public meeting notice or directly to policeaccountability@portlandoregon.gov to ask for other access assistance, including interpretation into other languages. This meeting is a public meeting subject to the City of Portland Administrative Code and Oregon State Law and is being recorded. For this meeting, the chat function is enabled for commission members to communicate with each other. Members of the public will be able to ask questions using Zoom's Q&A feature. As the commissioners are presenting and are discussing things, if attendees have questions, please feel free to submit them through the Q&A. We hope to use this feature to help guide our conversation during the meeting and future meetings and agenda topics. We'd like to be clear that no questions will be answered during the meeting, but if answered, both the questions and answer will be visible to you and will become part of the meeting record. To access this feature, just click on the Q&A icon in the middle of your screen. And I will pass it to the co-chairs, one of the co-chairs to do the land acknowledgement.
Yeah, it's me, it's Debbie. I'm Debbie Iona, she, her. I'm one of the co-chairs, and I'm going to be reading the land acknowledgement tonight. We acknowledge that the rivers, lakes, streams, and lands of the Lower Willamette River rest upon the occupied territories of the Multnomah, Wasco, Cowlitz, Cathlamet, Clackamas, Chinook, Tualatin, Kalapuya, Molalla, and many other tribes. We recognize the many villages, traditions, cultures, and relationships that existed along the river since time immemorial. We recognize these tribes stewarded these lands and rivers since time immemorial for future generations. We recognize and undertake responsibility for the destruction of the river and land, of traditional food sources, sacred places, and multifaceted ways of life. We acknowledge the economic and social values that enabled the harm to the river, including systemic racism, classism, and other systems of oppression that perpetuated harm against Black, Indigenous, and immigrant communities along the river. With this acknowledgement, we commit to honoring and learning from the past and working towards a more equitable and sustainable future for the Lower Willamette River. We commit to seeking solutions that acknowledge the inequities of past socioeconomic policies and the harm done to people and our relationships to these lands and waters.
Thank you, Co-Chair Debbie. Now we will pass to review our community agreements. I will just remind you there's 3 pages of community agreements. Each one, you can read each one, and then at the end, I will ask the question. Okay, let me ask the questions. Do we all commit to following the community agreements for today's meeting and to gently calling in our colleagues and collaborators if needed? And if I can see your hands or any. Thank you very much. I will pass it to the co-chairs to discuss the timeline.
Thank you, Victoria. I will be reading the timeline. My name is Christian. I'm one of the co-chairs from this past phase. Thank you. The Police Accountability Commission has split its work into 6 phases. It's now in its 5th phase of work, the transition plan and a broader system. The commission will work until the end of August 2023 and will present its proposals to City Council for their consideration and approval after it finishes meeting. This slide shows the outcome documents for the transition plan and broader system phase based on the agenda and scope approved by the commission. Now that the Police Accountability Commission has developed a rough draft of what the new accountability and oversight system will look like, the PAC in this phase developed a transition plan for how to get from here to there, an understanding of how the process of implementing the new system will change or interact with other police oversight systems and levels of government, and also will name the new oversight board and bureau. Today, the police accountability discussion will discuss the draft areas of agreement on name and other details. This slide is the current project plan for the transition plan and broader system phase of the Police Accountability Commission's work. This slide is for members of the public to be able to understand how the commission gets from now to the end of the phase. Today's meeting falls into the blue boxes with the purple border located on the right portions of the screen. Following today, here are the upcoming meetings of the Police Accountability Commission we'd like to highlight. There will be a full commission meeting next Monday, July 24th from 6:30 to 9 p.m. to continue the next phase of work, which is the 6th and final phase. For today's meeting, we will be having an equity training and then discussions and ideally approval of the draft areas of agreement on name and other details, as well as phase of work transition tasks and public comment.
Thank you, Co-Chair Christian. And now our next item on our agenda will be our equity training, and I will pass it to Dr. Moses for our training. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. It's such an honor to be here as your equity trainer. You have Aimee and Victoria, all 3 of us here this evening. It is wonderful. And we are going to continue on with our work in my grandmother's hands. We've had a couple of really good conversations about what trauma is, and I want us to continue to think about how it shows up in our lives as well as in the lives of the people that we are working to bring oversight to. And so would someone again volunteer to read this slide, pretty please? Thank you. Catherine.
Trauma is the body's protective response to an event or a series of events that it perceives as potentially dangerous.
And what do you think, Catherine, are potentially dangerous perceptions? Just, if you could just give us a couple of examples. Does not have to be from your life, but just what you think could be potentially dangerous that a body could react to.
Well, if you go back to your classic fight or flight response, which is where this comes from, like crossing a street and all of a sudden having a car barrel towards you would be a potentially dangerous situation that could provoke a trauma response. Something closer to home here, seeing blue and red lights flashing behind your car when you're driving, I think often will provoke a response of, that fight or flight response, because, that can often mean you've been driving too fast, or could mean just that you got pulled over for some reason and you, just are not confident about how that might go. So those are two examples I would provide.
Thank you so very much for that. I really appreciate it. And they're both relatable. They're both very, very relatable. And the trauma can get stuck in the body, as well as smells and sights and feelings and all sorts of things can be manifest in your body when you're having a trauma response. Monica, please jump on in.
I just wanted to mention that I've been reading The Future is Disabled. And one of the strongest statements at the beginning of the book is that there are many groups of vulnerable populations that, we feel like the world is killing us, right? Like it's here to kill us. The system is here to kill us. And that's something that you walk around with all the time.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for that. Yes, and remembering our equity trainings that we have multiple levels that are happening all the time: culture, systems, institution, and personal, right? The individual level. There's always these 4 different levels. Some people say 3, some say 2, whatever, however you are able to organize, create a gestalt around oppression in our culture, in our society. Whatever works for you is absolutely fine, but it's really acknowledging where it comes from and how it's brought there, and then working to interrupt it. And that's what you're doing. That is exactly what you're doing. And so again, I'm wanting us to talk about clean pain and dirty pain, because I think this is one of Resmaa Menachen's, this is what I have really learned from his book, My Grandmother's Hands, is how to find that distinction when my ego is hurt, when I'm upset, when I'm blaming the world, versus when I'm taking responsibility and I am upset, but it's because I've made a mistake, or it's because there is actually real harm that's happened, but I'm taking responsibility for my reaction to it. And that's where that clean pain sits, is when I have a conscious choice, and not when I'm in fight or flight. When I'm not in an amygdala hijack, when I am staying in my prefrontal cortex, my executive decision-making is online, and I have choices. It's in the dirty pain, in the ego-centered places when I start blaming other people and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So I think this is a really important distinction that he makes in his book, because then we have discernment. We have a nuance around what we're feeling, and we have words that we can put to this. Any observations around clean pain versus dirty pain that people would want to bring up about this? Do we see how institutions can blame the victim instead of take responsibility? That it becomes the victim's fault, a character flaw, instead of actually it's the system that's the issue. Ajay.
So I read a tweet earlier that just reminded me of this distinction between clean pain and dirty pain. And it talked about the fight against, supposed critical race theory being in schools, even though it's a graduate level coursework, it's never been taught in schools, et cetera. And in this tweet, it talked about how, people that are fighting against, having Black history in schools, they assume that their children will identify with the slave owner and not the abolitionists. And it betrays how they see themselves. And so, and how they see their children, to be honest. And that just reminded me of this distinction, this idea that when you can see the reality of something and then take responsibility for knowing and doing better, then it creates a sense of hopefulness about the future, versus when you deny your past, when you try to hide the truth, there's like this feeling of avoidance, blame, exactly all of this. So that's all.
Yeah, no, but you're making it real for us, right? And I really, really appreciate that. And I'm gonna bring in Ayamide now. Ayamide and I had a really nice conversation last night about pain, about clean pain and dirty pain and trauma, like what is happening in our bodies. So Ayamide, I would love to invite you in, talking about where it can get stuck in our body, but also in our mind, I guess, or emotions. So would love for you to go there. Pretty please.
Thank you, Dr. Moses.
Mhm.
One of the things that I do a lot of embodiment work, and our bodies have its own set of memories that we don't necessarily, we're not necessarily conscious of, but on top of just our bodies having memories, our own brains have memories too. And trauma is, let's see, how I wrote this. Trauma is also blocked memories that haven't been processed consciously. So if something like a smell or something that is subconscious hits your brain, people remember things, and then they're back in that same situation, it floods back into their bodies and they have full body memories. They have, a full-on triggered response. And it's something to consider when you're thinking and talking about trauma, and where that lies in terms of pain, how our bodies process it. Is that, my question would be to you, is would you consider that dirty pain or clean pain, being that it's a memory that you can't control?
I love that question. Let's talk about that question. What are your thoughts on that? Yes, Ajay.
I don't want to take up too much space. I've already talked already, but I was just thinking about how, they say like a lot of trauma is stored in the hips specifically. And I've noticed, in dance classes and stretching classes and yoga, it's like when we work with our hips, like people will like burst into tears, like people will like start crying. And like, there's something that's interesting, I think, about pain being stored in the body, and like thinking about the answer to this question of like, is it clean pain or dirty pain? I think the dirty pain is stifling our body's responses and being in denial of our body's responses. And the clean pain is like stretching and suddenly bursting into tears and not quite understanding why, and like releasing the, the trauma that's stored like in different parts of the body.
Thank you, Ajay. Monica, Commissioner Monica.
I also don't want to take up too much space, but I think one of the things that I'm working on big time is recognizing the response in my body when something affects me that way, and being in control of what happens afterwards. Because, prior to a few years ago, I was not in control, but that's what you have to work on to make it. It's going to happen, like you have to turn your dirty pain into clean pain and just allow it and move on. Ride the wave.
Commissioner Lavisa.
First I want to say that I love this book so much that I read it like a year ago, and I gave it away to somebody so they could read it, and they read it and they loved it so much that they gave it away to somebody so that they could read it. So I'm sad because I don't have my book in front of me, but hopefully it has gone on to help other people. But I was thinking, I was like, I really, really enjoyed this book. And also I have like a little bit of a quibble with like the uses of the word like clean and dirty, like for this pain, right? Because I think it can be, there's a lot of spaces where we try not to use like clean and dirty language because it can be apologizing, right? Like STI testing and sobriety and stuff, right? So that's like my only, just like a kind of a small quibble with like the use of the language, but I guess I try to think of it in terms of like helpful pain versus not helpful pain. And I think Ajay put it really well when they said like, it's like, there is like the pain of like holding on to like the way things have been or the way you've understood things to be. And then there's also like the pain of like letting go of like kind of that false illusion of control. So yeah, helpful versus unhelpful maybe is another way of framing it.
Thank you, Commissioner Lavisa. I like to throw in another thought in terms of the term dirty and clean pain. Because I'm also thinking in terms of like, we've been talking a lot more about how the body reacts, but I'm also wanting to talk about how the brain and the mind reacts, your memories, when you actually get a flood of memories. And when I think of dirty pain, I think of it being raw, not necessarily bad or good or even toxic, but just raw, grimy, uncontrollable, organic. And clean has been more like with it. You've worked with it in some capacity, or it's something that has come through more than one time and it's been refined. So another way of looking at it in terms of dirty not being something that's bad, but like, some of our food comes from, actually a lot of our food, all our plants come from dirt, and dirt is not a bad thing. So I think clean and dirty, I don't really think of it in terms of bad or good. So something else to just kind of give people when they're thinking about how people are processing pain or processing trauma. It's just at different stages for different people and different things, different elements of folks' trauma.
Thank you so much for that, for both of those reframings. I think that's really important. I also want us to remember that when we were reading the Racial Healing Handbook, that we're going to go through grief. We are going to feel grief when things happen to us. And we're going to feel grief when things don't change, right? Or when things happen. So just understanding and remembering that in chapter 2 of the Racial Healing Handbook, that there is that chapter on grief, and being able to move through that too may be really, really helpful. So I'm going to go ahead and share because I want us to lean in again. So this is his book. This is right out of his chapter. If someone would volunteer to read this slide, that would be wonderful, because this is his suggested process for being able to transform our pain into clean pain, into more refined pain that helps us be able to change the world around us. So if someone would volunteer, I'd really appreciate that. Thank you, Charlie. Thank you so much, Commissioner Charlie.
Okay, how to transform to clean pain. Let me Anchor 1, soothe yourself to quiet your mind, calm your heart, and settle your body. Anchor 2, notice sensations, vibrations, and emotions in your body instead of reacting to them. Anchor 3, accept discomfort, notice when it changes instead of trying to flee from them. Anchor 4, stay present in your body as you move through the unfolding experience with all its ambiguity and uncertainty, and respond from the best parts of yourself. Anchor 5, safely discharge any energy that remains, walk, work out, journal, etc.
Thank you, Commissioner Charlie. Any thoughts or reactions to these anchoring moves?
It's actually something that, just to be transparent, I've been practicing over the last, probably during the last phase and a half of the Police Accountability Commission. So that I could be more present and have learned these tools to quiet my mind and to calm my heart, to settle my body, because I was experiencing excessive body responses, very painful body responses to a lot of the work we're doing, and a lot of the experiences with police seen throughout my life was being triggered quite excessively and violently in my body. And so it was absolutely necessary to do, I'm doing EMDR, which is working amazingly well. It has allowed me to come back and be present with the tools that they're talking about here, which I do my very best to utilize.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Charlie. Thank you for that. Yes, the point here is for us to be able to hold these conversations. The board, when it reviews the footage, is going to need these types of skills, these types of tactics to be able to move the energy through their body. And also, when we are thinking about trauma in the police body, it is very similar. It is all about having to hold white supremacy in place, whether cognitively acknowledging it or not. And there is just so much trauma in that place in and of itself. And then they go into really, into different situations. And so when we're all walking around potentially triggered with a lot of trauma in our bodies that is not addressed, then we are really required to take care of ourselves and to acknowledge the chronic stress and how to address it. And specifically, Resma talks about eating well and sleeping and creating relationships, because we need to metabolize the trauma. We need to find a way to move this negative energy through our bodies so we can create better decision making. That's the upshot. And that's what we're asking our police to do. Part of it is holding them accountable, absolutely, for their behavior and for them to take care of themselves, for them to heal themselves. So I'm wondering how that lands for you while you're moving into the 6th phase and getting ready to place your work in front of the city council. How is this landing for you? Sophia? Would love to hear your voice.
When you say how is it landing, what is the it?
It is understanding that trauma is in the police body, and that when you're holding a police officer accountable, you're holding them accountable for managing their trauma as well as their behavior.
So my thoughts, I understand that just from other experiences that trauma is in the police bodies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I know that by the way they react and they respond, in particular to minorities. It's aggressive. It's without any thought. My term was, it's like someone who has this irrational fear of spiders. And as soon as they see one, they just scream and kill, 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 kill. They don't even think about it. And so that trauma, whatever it might be for them, is to react violently and not to stop and think and look at the whole situation and go through that. My other experience has been, specifically with retired police officers. I just find that the ones that I've met have some serious issues. It's almost as if they can't turn that thing off once they're even retired. Long story, I had a trip with supposedly a nice trip with a retired police officer and in one of my groups, and he just couldn't. It was just something about he could not stop that behavior. It just ruined the group's trip, in the sense that we had to exclude him because of his behavior. So I don't want to take up too much more time, but my thought is I'm trying to find the right words for it. I've made comments that it's not easy being a police officer, and if you don't have the skills, you shouldn't be one. And these traumas that they are experiencing that can cause them to be less than what they should be as a police officer has to be managed. And if they can't manage, they shouldn't have the position. So that's kind of my thoughts for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Sophia. Commissioner Charlie, and then Commissioner Dan, and then we'll wrap up.
So I was thinking, that perceived danger when they see, especially a Black male. I was listening to a podcast by Dr. Tommy Curry, and he's a scholar and a writer, and he studies the Black men, which few people do, and he gets in a lot of runs across a lot of issues in the universities he works at, and he tries to bring those studies to them, and he gets death threats and against him, his wife, his children, and he has to move around from university to university. But one of the things he says is that so this could explain the perceived danger that is causing this trauma, is that he says the only time like a police officer, a white police officer or a white male feels safe around a Black man is over his dead body.
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much. I agree with that statement. Commissioner Dan.
Hi, I'm Dan Handelman. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm a commissioner. And this week, actually tonight, was the first meeting with Portland Police revealing their annual report. They had one meeting tonight that just ended. They're having another one Tuesday night at 6 and another one next Thursday when we also have a meeting at 6. And when I looked at the draft report, they talk in the beginning about this wellness program that have just started up in the last few years for the police officers. And it's just sort of casually mentioned as something that they are working on. Then buried almost all the way at the end of the report, it says that when they surveyed 1/3 of officers who were planning to leave the Portland Police Bureau, when they surveyed officers who were planning to leave the police bureau, 1/3 of them said one of the reasons they decided to stay is because there's a wellness program for them. And I think it's a very big mistake that they didn't put that in the front of the report, because that's tremendous. And, you know, they'd probably get more officers who would take care of themselves if they would promote that program more. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate this conversation this evening. I hope this training, these conversations have broadened us. I've learned so much from you in terms of the equity trainings and helping you be able to frame your work as you've been doing this. And just want to say thank you so very much. So I'm going to turn it back over to Victoria, and thank you so much, Ayomide. Really appreciate.
Thank you both.
Yes, thank you. We learned so much from you, Dr. Moses, and of course from Ayomide. Thank you very much for doing these trainings that helps all of us and remind us why we are here. Thank you. And thank you, Ayomide, too. Okay, now our next item in the agenda will be updates. We're gonna have updates on legal counsel and consultations and community engagement. We're going to hear updates from staff about legal consultations and then about PAC community engagement. I will pass it to Samir, to staff.
Yep, thank you. Samir Canal, use he/him pronouns, project manager for the PAC. Just wanted to mention Jenny Marston was unable to join today. But just for those who've been following along, when the work plan was being reviewed, that there will be legal consultations designed to convert existing agreements from the PAC and its areas of agreement or whatever other documents have been approved into legal text. Those are ongoing and have started as of yesterday. And just to kind of show what how that's going to contribute to the overall flow of the 6th phase of work. We'll talk more about this a little bit later in the meeting, and a lot later in the meeting, I guess. But there are 2 tracks, and what we're talking about is the pink at the bottom here. They're designed to convert without changing the direction established by the members. Ensure that the draft text reflects that intention and reflects the direction that the areas of agreement provide. And so those have started. They're going to be continuing on through the end of next week. And that will contribute to piece by piece building the draft code package that will be released to the public and to the members as one big document in early August, and which in mid-August will eventually be workshopped and approved by the PAC as part of its development once setting the council. So that's the update in brief. And again, started yesterday and will go through the end of next week. Thank you.
Thank you, staff. Now I will pass it to Austin for the community engagement.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Victoria. Thank you, Dr. Moses and team for the equity training this evening. That was wonderful to be a part of. My name is Austin Foster. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Community Engagement and Communications Coordinator for the PAC. And I actually would love to welcome in, you'll see some faces on here, commissioners that you haven't met before. We are going to briefly take about 3 minutes each to introduce our 2 consulting companies who we have hired to help us in the next 6 weeks with community engagement. So with that, I will go ahead and pass it over to Lily with LD Consulting.
Thanks, Austin. Thank you, everybody, for having me. And it's great to see so many faces. I think, oh, perfect. I was like, well, that is my face on the screen. But yes, my name is Lily Xu. I use she, her pronouns. I work for a small COVID woman and minority-owned business. Lindsay Derrickson, who is the founder of LD Consulting, started her business in 2020 in the heat of COVID. And, you know, while we do work very closely in the clean energy space, what is really important for our firm is that we center people first and that we highlight and increase visibility and accessibility to our communities. And as we dive deeper into this work, we couldn't be more excited to come across what you all are working on with the PAC. And yeah, we're looking forward to fast track in this next 6 weeks, trying to get as much engagement as possible. We were brought on by Austin around 3 weeks ago, and we're excited to focus in on mainly the Latino, Latinx communities with the focus in mental health and small business. And really would like to hear from that community on how they are affected by the police, the Portland Police Bureau specifically, and also wanted to hear from the houseless, homeless, and unsheltered communities. While doing that, we're also supporting ongoing PAC work and supporting and working with other existing PAC partners, such as Fort Forces, who you will get to meet right after us. And yeah, in this slide, it just goes over who we are, you know, what are we doing for this project. And we just have such a wonderful team that is full of experiences from all walks of life. And yeah, just really excited to be here and excited to see where we could take this work. So thank you for having us.
Thank you, Lily. Really excited to have y'all here. And with that, I'll pass it over to Jennifer with Fort Forces.
Hello, Commission. Hello, everyone that's tuning in, public members too as well. My name is Jennifer Harbnett. I am the CEO and founder of Fort Forces, Inc. Austin, or were you able to share our slide so I can let everyone see our team?
Yep.
Thank you. So Fort Forces, Inc., we are so thrilled to be a part of the Police Accountability Commission and helping get all of the community input that we can. Our focus is on the LGBTQIA community and the business owners too as well that are LGBTQ. And we also are focusing on aging adults from the immigrant community and the BIPOC community in general. And then our other focus is on hearing from the youth of the city of Portland, getting them involved and understanding what you guys have proposed as the policies for police accountability. And then our other demographic is also reaching just really those who haven't heard or know about these systems that are also involved in the advocacy for their community. So that'd be community-based organizations led in the field of gang and gun violence prevention. A little bit about For Forces Inc. We began in 2020, and we have built our staff out to 7 staff members at this time. I also, our team who's online right now is Honorvia Hardy, which she is going to be, you're going to see a lot of her as a facilitator, and she's also a senior consultant. We specialize in diversity, equity, and inclusion, state and federal compliance, fundraising and capacity building for CBOs and small businesses, project management, a lot of community outreach and engagement, and research and data analysis. So again, we're just happy to be advocates for communities and allies to you all with the government agencies that we work with. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thanks to LD Consulting and For Forces. We are so excited to have you guys on board. You know, home stretch here, we've got 6 weeks and we already have so many fun events planned. So very, very much looking forward to those and so grateful to have you guys as part of the team. So thank you. Commissioners, you'll be seeing some of their names and emails and in invites and things like that, as they are going to be an extension of community engagement, helping get us into a lot more events throughout the community in the next 6 weeks. So with that, I also want to share just some community engagement updates in general, kind of a calendar timeline, if you will, for the next ones that are coming up. So anybody listening in the audience, we do have a call-in show that we're doing with KBOO Radio this Tuesday, the 25th of July, and that's going to be from 5 to 6 p.m. And I'll put all this information in the chat so you don't have to remember it. But there is a phone number, so you can call in during that time and you'll be able to ask questions of the police accountability commissioners. We will have 5 commissioners on live on the air, as well as myself in the KBOO station for that interview time. And if you aren't able to call in from 5 to 6 p.m. on Tuesday, you can also email them in any questions or comments that you want, and they'll be reading through those live during the show on Tuesday. So that's with Totality of Circumstances Radio. Sam and Jasmine have been following the work of the PAC since its conception. So I'll put all that in the chat for you, but that is on Tuesday. And then our next community engagement event is going to be Wednesday, the very next day. So next Wednesday, 6 days from today, we will be having a community info session in Southwest Portland at the Multnomah Arts Center. This is going to be from 6 to 8 p.m. and it's going to be on Zoom as well. So if you are able to come in person and meet some of the commissioners and staff, you know, if you can join us on Zoom, we would love to have you. Really how these community engagement events are going to be different, if you've gone to community engagement events in the past and you're like, why do I need to go to this one, is now we're really focusing on it's more presentation heavy. So in the beginning, there's about a 30-minute presentation of slides that staff and the police accountability commissioners who are there will be giving to the general public. So this is really where you can come to hear about the policy and what has been put together so far, and give us your direct feedback on those things. So we'll go through like the complaint process and things like that about, you know, the staff that will be hired and stuff like that. So come check it out this coming Wednesday at the Multnomah Arts Center, or you can join us on Zoom. And I'll put the RSVP link for that in the chat as well. And then we are going to be doing another community info session on a Saturday from 10 a.m. to 12. That's going to be on August 12th. We are looking at doing that in Lentz or Mill Park area east of 82nd. So when I have that location locked down, I will let everybody know. But yeah, so those are kind of just the next upcoming events that we've got. And we would love to have, you know, as many people there as possible. This is the time now. You know, 82% of Portlanders voted yes for this bill, but it's going to represent 100% of Portlanders. So we would love to see any and everyone at these events. So come on out and check it out. And as always, you can submit public comment through our online SurveyMonkey form. So I'll put that in the chat as well. And sign up for our email list. And that's where you can get all the updates on all of these events that are coming up. So thank you.
Thank you, Austin, and welcome, Lily and Jennifer. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your introduction. Welcome. Okay, it is 7:58. We're gonna take a short break, 5-minute break. We will come back. Let's come back at 8:04, and then we'll continue with the conversation. Okay, thank you. Okay. It's 8:04 and we will continue with our agenda. Welcome back, everyone. Now we're gonna start with our conversations. But before starting with the conversation around this document, the PAC will review the values and goals document it approved last March, which includes self-imposed standards for the future work of the PAC. As you are reviewing the document, please consider whether it meets your own standards and you can adapt the document so that you are sure it does by the time you make a decision on approving it. I'll pass it to staff to review values and goals.
Thank you. Yeah, so we're going to do 2 reviews, first on the values and goals and then on the survey results before getting into the content of the document, which again is the draft areas of agreement on name and other details. The values and goals document has 4 pages. There's this introductory information here, and then there's a table with the values, 6 of them, the relevant goals, and several success criteria or considerations that relate to each value and goal. As we're going through this, I'm not going to read it all, but just we'll scroll through it. Co-chairs, if there are any particular values, goals, or success criteria that you think are particularly relevant for this particular document, after we scroll through it, please feel free to point those out and contribute to. And numbers 3 and 5 are split by a page break, so we'll just try to show them in full in a moment. That's the end of the document. Co-chairs in particular, Christian and Debbie, do you have any particular ones you wanted to highlight or point out? The only one that came up that that may be relevant in previous conversations was the middle column of building and earning trust from the community and how the name can potentially achieve that. That was brought up in a previous meeting. So just mention that here as well. And Debbie, did you want to add anything else?
I was just gonna say, with that in mind, I think that, you know, I read some of I didn't get through all the slides that you made where you captured the comments from the public. And, you know, I think that unless all of the commissioners have had a chance to read those, I think it might be a nice idea to just, we don't have to read them out loud, but to show each slide individually with enough time for us to read them, because I thought there were really a lot of helpful things in there. So that if co-chair Christian agrees, I think that might be very useful.
Yeah, I'm totally fine with that.
And Commissioner Angie, you have a question?
Oh, I just had a comment that it kind of touches on what Debbie just said, and that you had asked if there was anything that any of these that we really wanted to focus in on. And I do have to admit that focusing in on being community centered and seeing those, you know, I always want to remember that each one of us is representing our community in all of this, and trying to remember like what it is that we are trying to represent when we're making our decisions. So thank you.
Thank you.
I think Commissioner Monica has a hand raised too.
Oh, yes. Go ahead, Commissioner Monica. I'm sorry, I couldn't see your hand with the
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I wanted to highlight community centered as well, because in the recent days there's been news about people in power wanting to change the will of the voters. 82% of Portland, that's our community, and our community voted for something, and we're tasked to put into place what their dream was and what Portland wanted out of police accountability. And I'm just really saddened that the system is trying to go back on it. And I almost feel like it's unethical.
Thank you, Commissioner Monica. Are there any more comments before we start with the discussion?
Happy to go over the survey results here as well.
Okay.
Just, so these are the options that were sent to the community survey. I know that there was some desire to limit how acronyms are used, but to make things fit on a slide, there were some acronyms that were used. What you're going to see is not at all every comment that was made, but it is a selection of them that relate to the three sort of questions that were discussed by the members of the commission in late June that were open. One related to the use of the term oversight versus accountability. The other related to the use of terms like community or community-led or Portland, which were sort of the additional terms to try and you know, indicate the connection there. And then the third was of versus for. And so there's way too many comments to go through all of them here and still have time to do anything, but we'll just kind of scroll through and talk about it. Before any of that though, should note that the first two questions that you're going to look at here is what the responses were to the preferences. And it was pointed out prior to the meeting that these results do pretty strongly favor one option in each case. In this case, it's a community board for police accountability option. However, there are two options that say the word oversight in them. And so just to clarify, 41% of responses picked oversight in some way, and slightly above 60% picked accountability. That does add up to over 100% because there are a handful of responses that checked at least one of each. So just to give you an idea of roughly the response, you can see 62% in this particular question picking Community Board for Police Oversight as their highest preference for the name of the board. And 41% is higher than this, but again, that's because these two could be added together. There are a couple of people who pick both, but yeah, for the name of the bureau, similarly, one option has a greater level of preference, the Office for Police Accountability, which you'll see as OPA in a few later slides as well. So now getting into the comments, again, just going to scroll through these. There are lots of different slides, and these are all from each box is from a different response, a different person. A lot of people weighed in on oversight or accountability or other terms that are in the name, and it's a pretty reflective mix of what the survey results say in terms of preferences, in terms of the overall balance of comments as well. So just gonna stop talking for a minute, scroll through these 7 slides on these comments. And Co-Chair Debbie, did you want to?
Well, I was just gonna ask if you could leave them up long enough so that people could realistically read most of at least what's on each slide.
Sure, there's a lot. I don't want to take up too much of the meeting, so I'll try to, let me know if I need to slow down or speed up. Oh, cheers.
Thanks.
And so just to clarify, although these are 2 in the same table, these are 2 different responses from different people. Each box is a different response. And the other thing that's worth mentioning, so this, when it has a bracketed name here, this is with relation to asking someone about their feelings about the name, the possible name, sorry, Community Board for Police Accountability. Their response was this phrase. So if you see a bracket at the beginning, that it was in response to that specific question. Moving to slide 2. Slide 3. Four out of 7. Five. Number 6 or 7. And finally, the seventh slide on the oversight and accountability. That was the longest collection of slides in here. There were a lot of comments on oversight and accountability, as you can see, and a lot of people who supported one, the other, both, neither in a couple of cases as well. And perhaps it should have been noted up front. This is the community member survey it reflects the survey responses that were received. Thank you to all the community members who did fill this out. And also for members of the commission, the ultimate choice of what to recommend remains yours, and you'll be getting to that in just a moment here. The second question was, and there are 4 slides on this one, some of them are a little spaced out a little more, was on those additional terms that might connect it back to here. So you may notice, and it starts to get a little bit more specific to the question, CBPA, it's the community board here. PCPOB was the Portland Community Police Oversight Board. And so you may find comments that relate to those specifically and how that's used, including a couple that relate to the order of words, as you can see an example being the phrase community police back to back. So I'm just going to do this one again. There are 4 slides on this question. Second slide. It's the first time we've seen some of the bureau names. So OCPO was the one that had lead in the name, Office of Community or Community Led Police Oversight. Office of Police Oversight, Office for Police Accountability was OPA. Third slide out of 4. And finally, the 4th slide on this question. So again, that was the second question, those additional terms that beyond board or office, the term identifying what's being overseen or accountability is for, and then the use of the term oversight and accountability. So 4 slides on community, community-led, and Portland. And then the last question is just 1 slide on this one. It was of and for. Is there any part of this that anyone would like to scroll back to real quick before we switch to the document? Again, this is in the slides that were sent out and are on the website live. The full survey results are also published to the website. There were plenty of other comments that don't relate specifically to these 3 questions that may be useful for you to reference, and those were sent out last week and posted online as well. So with that, I'm going to switch over to the document. And the document has, you're looking at the entirety of the document right now. And it is noted that the co-chairs chose to have the text that's in here as a starting point be the one that got the most responses. However, all the finalists are over here as well. You're welcome to choose a different one. You're also welcome to workshop or change it in any way, letter by letter, if you want. And so I'll pass it back over to facilitators and co-chairs at this time.
Thank you. And before we start, we will move to discussing the draft areas of agreement on name and other details. We can cross-reference the outline and other resources if needed. As we go through, we address proposed change from co-chairs as well as from other members received in advance. The subcommittee can also make new proposed text changes. After completing this pass, we'll resolve any outstanding items flagged for further discussion and move into potentially referring this document to the full commission, to us. We ask you to follow our normal discussion rules. Please be brief each time you speak, even though you can speak multiple times. Please be facilitator and remember that we use a weighted stack in our discussions. Finally, please be forward-looking into your comments. Will the co-chairs like to get us started? Co-chair Debbie?
Okay, I'll just quickly, based on what was in the public comments, I kind of was persuaded that is better than 4, just a big decision for us to make. And that my sense from what we heard from the public was that they felt like accountability was stronger than oversight. And so I kind of am leaning, and believe me, I'm not like wedded to any of this. I'm just, this is my sense right now. So those are my 2 comments based on what we heard from the public.
Thank you. Now we can start with the discussion. I will pass it to the co-chairs.
Cool. I can say something since we just something. I noticed as well that of seemed to kind of win out a little bit over 4. And accountability clearly was favored for the most part. I do think it's important to note that there were a fair amount of comments that did acknowledge accountability would be preferred, but only if they thought it was, if we thought it was possible. And I think that's a conversation we've been having generally over the course of the PAC's existence. So I feel like whatever we decide as a group, whether it be accountability or oversight, I think it's important to have some kind of mention of that within this conversation, so people who look back on this know that we're kind of acknowledging that, because I think it's really important. And there's a lot of barriers still to the whole process of accountability, moving on from this point. Yeah.
Thank you, Co-Chair Christian. Now, Commissioner Monica.
I agree with both, and at the same time, I also read very strong comments and feelings around one versus the other. And I just want to throw out there that accountability and oversight mean 2 different things. And maybe we need to say that we are both for accountability and oversight. And I think that kind of throws a little spin on this discussion, but I'd like that to be considered.
Thank you, Commissioner Monica. Commissioner Sophia?
Yes, I'm just going to agree with Commissioner Monica. That was something that I had put out earlier in our discussions in the past using both, but people were wanting one or the other. But based on the comments, I think because they both mean two different things and there are things that we do want, that we may consider having both accountability, oversight, and accountability. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sophia. Commissioner Dan?
So I want to preface my comments by saying that I've been producing works at a cable access facility for many years. It's called Portland. It was called Portland Community Media. 3 simple words: Portland, community, and media. So you know what it was. They rebranded a few years ago and called themselves Open Signal, which you don't have no idea what it is. So my main interest here is that when you look at the name, you know what it is, so that we're not, as some people said in their comments, equivocating or trying to cover up what it is that we're talking about. I also think that the name has to be relatively short, because ultimately the new name was actually Open Signal Portland Community Media Center, and had 6 words, and is very clunky, and they hardly ever use the end of it anymore, where the word community in that name is very important. So to achieve getting both the words accountability and oversight in, I'm thinking maybe we should have the board have the word accountability in it, and the office have the word oversight in it. So staff, can you pull up the slide? It's got the 6 names on it, because this version is just too hard to read with the tiny little words. I think it was slide 18. There you go. All right. So I'm thinking of the one in the upper left corner, Community Board for Police Accountability. And it says for, not of, because that's what the board's for. We're hoping to achieve it. We recognize what the community said, that it's not necessarily going to happen. And in the lower right corner, Office for Community-Led Police Oversight. And I saw the comments about lead, and there's one or two comments where they used community-based instead. And I'm actually, wondering if we'd be open to using that. So it would be the Community Board for Police Accountability, which picks the Office for Community-Based Police Oversight Director and makes all the decisions. So that's my proposal. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Dan. Commissioner Charlie?
Keeping in mind community, could you go back to that slide? Pretty please.
Moment, sorry.
Yeah. Keeping in mind, community centered. One of the things I read that really stuck out to me and falls in line with how I'd like to see it is, they said accountability gives content to the purpose of the oversight bureau, right? And so I do agree too that one needs to at least have the accountability community board for police accountability. And then the office, I also, well, I'm not, let's see. Maybe office for community based. I do like that now that you've mentioned that, based police oversight. At least one that leads to the other, if that makes sense. So community board for police accountability that leads to Office of Police Oversight, or police for community based. No, I think I like Office for Police Oversight. It's a little bit shorter. Office of Police Oversight. Anyway, that's just mine. This leads to that.
Thank you, Commissioner Charlie. And I would ask all the commissioners to participate, and you can say I don't have any comment. Commissioner Yumi.
Hi, sorry, my router died on me, so I'm calling in from my phone here. I think I echo Dan's sentiment about at least one of his suggestions, which is I think that the board is for something and the office is of something. Personally, I think I in terms of avoiding confusion, I like having those two mirror each other in terms of they could both be for accountability or they could both be oversight. I do think I give a lot of credence to the fact that there's a pretty strong winner's not the wrong word, but there's a pretty strong preference here in the survey. And we are a community-led organization, or a community-informed organization when we're making this decision. I apologize if perhaps someone has already made this point, but I noticed that the real through line in this is that people say, well, you should do oversight because you can't achieve accountability. And then a lot of other people say, you should probably do oversight, but maybe that's just me buying into the current nature of the system, and you really should be, striving for accountability. So I can see both sides of it. I think the only thing that I am I'm sure on is the fact that the board we should be for whatever we choose as our adjective. And I think the office should be out. That's my 2 cents. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Yumi. Commissioner Ajay, would you like to comment?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the people have kind of clearly spoken. I have my own beliefs that I've expressed before about accountability versus oversight, but yeah, I prefer to sort of go with the majority thinks. And I also agree with the Bureau for Office of Delineation. I think that makes a lot of sense to me. So that's all my comments. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Catherine.
Well, I guess I am in the camp of thinking that we should end in the accountability camp, just because this just seemed to resonate with more people. And it resonated with me tonight because of our equity discussion, where it seemed like the difference between the clean and constructive pain and complicated, dirty, non-productive pain was accountability. So it just triggered that discussion again for me, and in a positive way. So I guess I come down on the side of accountability. I do appreciate the comments that people made about oversight and accountability being different functions, and we do have that policy role. So I would also be open to some of the suggestions we heard about a way to incorporate both terms. If we decide one or the other, then I would vote to base our names, both Bureau and Board, around the concept of accountability. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Catherine. Commissioner Casey?
So I am in agreement largely with other commissioners, so I'll just say why briefly. I think that we want to keep it simple. I think we want some continuity, and we are the Police Accountability Commission. And so if people have been following this process, they will see accountability sort of as a through line throughout it. And I also think in terms of what we've been saying around like what can we deliver, what is our intention to deliver, things like that, I think that it's currently not possible to have oversight over the Portland Police Bureau because there isn't any accountability. And so whatever you might want to tell the Bureau, hey, we are overseeing you, we think you're doing this wrong, you should do it better. There's no reason for them to listen to you because there's no accountability for them to do it better or worse. So I think that we have to achieve accountability, which is really the primary purpose of this board, before we can then have even a relationship with the Bureau where they would even be willing to accept oversight. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Commissioner Casey. Commissioner Charlie.
Well, I also just want to remind y'all that that's what community voted for, police accountability measure. So I think it's important that that's what they're wanting. right? That's what we need, and that's what we're working towards. So, yeah, I feel strongly about the accountability. And yeah, maybe even in both now that I've heard some of you others talk. So.
Thank you, Commissioner Charlie. Commissioner Cameron?
I don't have anything more to really add than what everyone else has said. I do appreciate what the community has spoken about and voted for, and everyone else's little changes and things are also fantastic, but I don't, it's all awesome. So good work. Thanks.
Thank you. Then next, we need to go and choose. Yes, Commissioner Dan.
Well, I'm still pretty, I don't know, feeling a little weird about having one word and not the other. But either way, none of the office name that's up on our screen doesn't have the one that includes the word accountability doesn't have the word community in it. I think that was one of the things that I saw throughout, that the word community is really important. So I'm hoping that if we choose the Office for Police Accountability, that we'd call it the Office for Community-Based Police Accountability, so that we can clearly show that it's not a police agency. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Dan. Is there, yeah, Commissioner Co-Chair Debbie?
Yeah, I was just going to say that when I first heard the idea about community-led, I liked the idea, but I didn't like the way it sounded for some reason. I really kind of prefer the community-based as a good substitute for that thought.
Thank you, Co-Chair Debbie. Commissioner Sophia?
Yes, I'm kind of going along the lines with Debbie. I'm looking at one of the suggestions was community empowered, which I really liked on one of the responses. I think, and community empowered says a lot more. But when we go back to whether we use accountability or oversight, the new bureau or board or office or whatever, the bureau or office, however we're going to call it, I think it should be the Office of Community Empowered Oversight and Empowered Police Oversight and Accountability. And then we get to the board, when we get to the actual board, the board does the accountability work, but the office is doing both. It's doing oversight and accountability. And I understand that we can't, and nothing's perfect, but the whole board entails oversight, looking at all the things that the police are doing. We're looking at the different connections with the state, local, and federal. So we're really doing oversight as well. And I think the name should say that, but the board is doing, in my mind, the board is doing the accountability part. So that's just my thoughts. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sophia. Okay, I just want to do a time check. It's 8:42. And we need to review the document and choose the name. Okay. Before the end of the meeting. I will pass it to the co-chairs. That way we can start reviewing these documents.
Cool. Thanks, Victoria. I feel like I am hearing some consensus coming together a little bit. Definitely the 4 in the accountability in the board, and then of in the office. I kind of am getting the sense that community board for police accountability, the top choice that was found in the survey, is sort of feeling like it's okay with everyone. If I'm wrong about that, someone feel free to speak up if I've misread that. The office, I think, is where there's a little bit more variation. I will say I like, well, actually, let me propose, would it be all right with everyone to focus on the office a little bit more? I feel like the community board maybe feels okay. Could we go to gallery view? Is that okay? I don't know if that's to give everyone. Can I get a show of like hands?
Yeah, and even if you ask, I need to ask this formal question.
Oh yeah, is that yeah. I was not asking. I wasn't proposing that we vote on it. I was asking if everyone's okay to focus on the other one for now. But if people want to vote, we can also vote on that. The only thing I was going to say about the office conversation was that the more we talk about it, I do kind of feel like adding community in there is a good idea. It does elongate it a little bit, but I think it seems like that's pretty important. And I want to mention too, there was one or two comments in the conversation that talked about how expressed a lot of frustration with the current system and expressed a lot of distrust in the current system, extending to like the process, even like the survey and the question that was being asked. And so I feel like putting community in there, even if it's just a little bit, might alleviate a little bit of that frustration, I guess, or at least extend some kind of like, it is based in community as opposed to an exterior city city only focused thing. Cool. Yeah, what Sophia just put in the chat, I think, is one of the ones that I was thinking about. Cool.
Thank you. Staff?
So just to clarify, it seemed, but we didn't ask officially, but effectively the question was, can we move on from this first part? Or if there were anybody wanted to flag a proposed change there before. So was it okay to move on?
Yeah, let me ask the question. For this first part, can we move on? And Commissioner Charlie, we can now move on, staff. Commissioner Charlie?
Oh, I was just gonna say, can we vote on this one now? And then we can spend the rest of the time on the other?
Sure, that's what we're trying to do. Thank you, Commissioner Charlie. Commissioner Catherine?
Yeah, I'm all right with that, but maybe just reserve the ability to come back based on the name for the office to just make sure it syncs with the name for the board. But so I guess my preference is to do what Christian proposed, which is to just sort of reach sort of a non-voted on consensus there, and then go to the office and then vote on them both. But I don't want to get hung up on process. I just want the ability to come back and check to make sure that the board name still works once we've named the office.
And just to clarify, that's effectively what can we move on does.
Okay, perfect. Then. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes. Let me ask, before I pass it to Commissioner Monica, unless it's about this specific part we have on the camera, is this your comment about this specific part? Okay, Commissioner Monica, go ahead.
I feel that I need to see both the board's name and the office name so that I can really think about how they both work together with each other. That's all.
Okay. We're gonna give a little bit of time, that way you can see it, but I am still gonna ask for the first part only. Let me ask about only the first part. Name of the community police oversight is highlighted. Can we move on? Okay, I see only a few. Is everybody? Can we move on? Okay.
Yes,
Let's go to the second part. Name of the bureau. Can we move on? Okay.
Sorry, to clarify, are you asking if we can move on with the Office for Police Accountability as the name of the bureau?
No, just for this part of the document to review the other parts, and then we'll work for the names to vote, and the names will come back as Commissioner Catherine requested. Okay, I think we will be able to move on for the first part. For the second part, Commissioner Monica.
The first part, I'm going back to the first part, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I would love to propose Community Board for Police Accountability and Oversight and Office for Police Accountability.
Okay. Then I will ask the other questions. That way we can see for the first part first and then the second part, because we have this motion to do these edits and make changes. Staff, you can highlight what I'm gonna ask the first question, please. Thank you. Is there a strong opposition to changing from what it was to the proposed change? Commissioner Ajay, you have a strong opposition?
I thought we were going to the second part first and discussing that and then going back to the name of the Community Oversight Board. I thought we were, did I just misunderstand that?
If you have any suggestions for the first part?
I thought that we weren't like, okay, so am I just confused that I thought we weren't discussing that first part and we were just going to the second part, or did I just mess that up?
Okay.
I that's what I thought too, Commissioner.
Okay.
AJ, that's, yeah, sorry, Victoria, but that's what I thought was happening as well.
Thank you. Let's in order to not be confused, can we staff go to the second part first? We will come back to discuss the first part. The first part, we haven't done nothing, just the suggestions of Commissioner Monica. Let me go to the second. Is there any comments, questions? Commissioner Catherine?
So I like community-based better than empowered, partly because it's got fewer syllables and we've already got a lot going on there. It's a small thing, but yeah, that's what I'd say.
Okay, that's a proposed change. Thank you, Commissioner Catherine. Commissioner Dan?
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner McDowell. And you know, one of the reasons that I was pushing for us to say oversight in one name and accountability in the other is if you talk really fast, like I do, the word accountability, you just trip over it. It is a lot of syllables, and oversight's a lot easier to say and understand. But so I'm willing to go along if people want to put both words in both titles. I just prefer to have one or the other. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Dan. Commissioner Catherine?
Sorry, I didn't lower my hand.
Okay, Commissioner Jumi?
Yeah, I would say it seems like we're going over these options and we're coming back to some. I have a suspicion that we may end up where we started, which is with Community Board for Police Accountability and Office for Police Accountability. I do think that if we're going to add this verbiage about the community, I like community-based better than community-led or community-empowered. I also think about Dan's consideration vis-a-vis how often we're going to say this. I mean, literally, we're talking about probably days of our lives if you think about how often you end up saying these words, and each word that we add does add to that a little bit. I don't know if I had to rank these. I think my first choice would just be what was proposed in the original document: Community Board for Police Accountability and Office of or for Police Accountability. The other two were fine, I suppose, but I think keeping it simple is probably good, and it seems to be the one that had the most community buy-in. I definitely love the spirit with which we've made these suggestions. It seems like we're going to have a hard time getting to consensus on alternative option A, alternative option B, etc.
Okay, I will pass it to staff, but before I pass it to staff, I go hear from Commissioner Sophia and Commissioner Catherine.
I'm just making addition to the comment for Commissioner Yue. You know, I understand, but also with the input that we got from the community, they also said that they liked having it community-based or empowered, and I think that is something that we should consider, seeing as how they didn't have all the input, they just had certain choices to choose from. So when we went over those comments, we can see that there were some other things that they were interested in that they didn't have a specific choice for. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sophia. Commissioner Catherine, would you like, you were raised.
Yeah, sure. I think that, I mean, this is all getting a little confusing, but I do think that one way maybe to, when we're down in the office, to get all of our concepts in as few words as possible is the community office. For, let's see, community office for police accountability, what staff is just typing right there. It's you got you lose the community based or community empowered or whatever, but it does allow you to get the community in there in as fewer words as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Sophia, you have your hand still raised. Do you wanna say?
Oh, no, I didn't, but I'm liking what Commissioner Catherine said. It kind of helps it, but I still well, he's put it on there already. So thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Staff already put in all your suggestions here. And because it's a little confusing to me, I asked him to ask the question for me. Because
Okay.
it's a different question. Thank you.
So, co-chairs, would you, actually, I'll happily let Commissioner Monica go first, and then I have a question.
Okay. Yes, Commissioner Monica.
Oh, I'm sorry, you guys. I keep saying things. Just a little vote into Community Board for Police Accountability and Oversight includes more than 100% of what people felt strongly about in both ways. And then the office, the Community Office for Police Accountability is under this board, which has a very inclusive and complicated, but very stately name.
Thank you, Commissioner Monica. And don't worry, we can stay here all night. I'm okay with it.
Okay, so I think the hard thing to do here is that there are perhaps different things. So what I'm going to do is ask a couple questions, if it's okay with co-chairs, and then say that we'll address the board, then we'll address the bureau, and then allow if anyone wants to come back to the board name. You'll have a chance to do that if the bureau name affects how you view that. Does that work for everyone? Okay. Co-chairs, would you mind if I asked preference questions as opposed to consensus for or against? With a lot of options, it gets a little difficult to do it the other way.
Yeah, I'm fine with preference. That sounds like a good way to do it.
That seems like a good idea, just to take a little straw poll with our hands,
Yeah, so I'm gonna show this in a couple ways here. For the name of the board, I'm sorry, Commissioner Dan, I didn't see your hand.
Right, before you do this, when we put community led together, my suggestion was to have this second part of the hyphenated word in lowercase so it doesn't add to the length of the acronym. So I'm hoping that you can do that with empowered and based. Thank you.
So it sounds like they're, in terms of the name of the board, that this is the general frame. It's going to be some combination of community board for police accountability, possibly with an oversight. Is there consensus around one of these two options being the starting point for this? Okay. So then the question is, do folks prefer number one or number two? So I'm just going to ask that question. And again, we will circle back to this after coming back to the Bureau. We'll come back to this after asking the question on the Bureau. So could everyone
Commissioner Ajay wants to say something.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Well, it sounded like there was a few folks that were saying like Office of Police Accountability. So is that not?
Yeah, we can circle to the of and the for in a second, but
okay.
That's
so when voting. Oh, so we're doing the first one.
Bureau board first, Bureau second, circle back to board third.
Okay.
So let's maybe ignore the preposition here for a second and say, is there a preference for community board something police accountability, or a preference for community board something police accountability and oversight? So I'll ask first if folks could raise their hands. This is a straw poll around community board for right now, police accountability. Just keep them up. Sorry, there's a lot of just making sure this is visible to the public. So, okay, see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, and then if we could do community board for police accountability and oversight.
And Commissioner Casey, you still have your hand. You're voting for both options. Okay, perfect.
Okay, great. So that's pretty clearly in support generally of the first option here. So now we'll ask the normal questions. Now, knowing the straw poll, is there strong opposition to going with, or I guess, are there any other changes anyone would like to make to community board for police accountability? Is there strong opposition to community board for police accountability? Is there general agreement to community board for police accountability? Okay, great. So you'll have the opportunity to circle back to that in just a second after the Bureau name. This one's a little bit more complicated. And kind of please bear with the ordering here. There's Office for Police Accountability, and in this case, we'll circle back to the for and of after the rest. But there's sort of two that are similar. Office for Police Accountability is the version that went to the public and got their 63% of the responses. Then there was the possibility of Community Office for Police Accountability. And then separately, there was the idea of adding oversight and back in, as well as community - something. So is it, co-chairs, does it make sense to look at the first two as sort of a set of options, and then the second two as sort of a set of options and narrow it down that way? Does that work for you, Debbie and Christian?
Sure.
Okay, so I'm going to ask if folks prefer the general framework of this type of a name or the general framework of this type of a name. Does everybody understand the question? After we narrow it down to two, we'll come back to narrowing it down to one. Any questions clarifying before we do this? Okay, so generally speaking, could everyone who prefers some version similar to 1 and 2 raise their hands? Great, see 7 here. And then could everyone who prefers some version similar to 3 and 4 raise their hands at this point? Great. Thank you. Now, looking at these two, effectively the main difference here is whether or not to add community to the front of it. So we'll ask who prefers, and we can amend it later as well after this. Commissioner Dan, Co-Chair Dan.
Right, well, the last option that says Office of Community-Based Oversight and Accountability was something that got kind of consensus-based added to along the way. So there's not an option in these first two now for something that would say Office of Community-Based Police Accountability, which would be something I would prefer. And I don't know if that's what you're talking about amending them, but that's the one
that's
I would.
exactly. Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's two possible things that might come up, which is adding a hyphenated something, as well as changing for to of, after determining whether the starting point is, one or two. So yes, there'll definitely be an opportunity to do that in about 30 seconds. Is that okay?
Well, I guess I'm a little. I'm not talking about putting based after community if community is the first word. So that's why I'm confused.
Okay, well, you'll have the opportunity to make any changes to it. It's just we'll have an understanding of where the group is at in terms of the general frame. So if hypothetically the name was going to be some office for or of police accountability or community office for or of police accountability, could we get everyone to raise their hands if they'd prefer office police accountability at this point? At 1 instead of 2 here. Okay, see 3, and then if for those who prefer 2 over 1, community office over office. So that's looks like 8. Okay. So with that said, now apologies for the formatting here. Okay, so with that all said, at this point, would anyone like to propose changing the for to an of or anything like that? Co-Chair Dan, see a couple of thumbs up as well.
Oh, yeah, well, yes, I think I heard everybody on this commission say they thought the office should be of and the board should be for. So I would like to say of, but I think community, the reason I don't like community office for police accountability is I feel like you'd walk in there and expect that ordinary community members are in the office, but it's actually an office staffed by professionals who are going to be paid members of the city bureaucracy. So I think it should be Office of Community-Based Police Accountability is what I'm suggesting to be more clear. Going back to my original point about my cable access name.
Okay, so I'm going to hold that for just a second and start by asking the for and of question and then circle back to that one. So for those, we're kind of basing it off of this at this point, and then we'll make adjustments. For those who prefer community office for police accountability as opposed to of, could you raise your hands at this point? Okay. And for those who prefer community office of to for police accountability. Okay. Again, pretty all right. Okay. So now doing this one more time. Are there any other changes other than what Commissioner Dan just mentioned that would be proposed? And I'm going to write those out, but just any other proposed things before moving along on this question?
There seems to be one in the chat.
Monica put something on the chat.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay. Okay. So again, there's sort of groupings here that emerge, and we'll circle back to that. One is whether to move community later and add a hyphen. And the second is if there's a hyphenated word, what's the second half of it? So I'll just break that question down into 2 parts. If you prefer to keep it as Community Office of Police Accountability, or if you'd like to change it to one of these is the question that's going to get asked right now. So is there a preference for those who have a preference to keep it as Community Office of Police Accountability, COPA, could you raise your hand at this point? Okay. And for those who'd prefer to move community later in it and add something, and again, and I should mention, Commissioner Monica, you could also add that up at the front as you put in the chat, which we can get into in a second if the #1 option wins. So for those who prefer to move community later in the name and add that hyphenated part, could you please raise your hands? Okay, so not everybody voted on that one, so it's a little inconclusive. I'm going to ask this one more time, and I'm going to try to be a little bit clear because I think I may have misspoken on that question.
Can I just say that I think COPPA is kind of an unfortunate acronym. So I just want to point that out for #1.
Not sure if you say it COPPA or COPA. That'd be up to whether, or COPA, as many people do not prefer pronounceable acronyms. Okay, so let's just do this one more time here. One of these first two options or one of the second two options is the question. Okay, so moving community later. Can those who prefer one of the first two options, this formulation, please raise your hands? Okay. And can those, seeing three, those who prefer one of the second two options, please raise your hands. Okay, definitely more support for the last later two. So now, hopefully, possibly last question, based or led is the question here. So Office of Community Something Police Accountability. Can those who prefer based, please raise your hands. Sorry. Okay, and can those who prefer led, please raise your hands. Okay, it's closer, but that's going to be based, and then I'm noting here the lack of capitalization as well. Thank you for that typographical edit. Okay, second to last question, or third to last, sorry. Is there strong opposition to the Office of Community-Based Police Accountability? Is there general, sorry, I don't know if you were just jumping the gun there. Was there strong opposition, Commissioner Sophia?
I want to say no, but I do think, in my opinion, that oversight and accountability will be more comprehensive. So that's just a comment. I know we took it out, but it was voted out, but I just wanted to bring that up again. Thank you.
So just clarifying, it's okay if the answer is yes. Do you have strong opposition to this version of it though?
I want us to vote on something. So if people feel that they don't want it, I don't want to go through all that. Put it that way. I just want to go on, but I just think it's probably, in my mind, important enough to say I'd like oversight on that as well.
Okay. So I'm going to interpret that as opposition and ask a yes or no question as to whether or not to add. I'll just show it in here, oversight and. So could all those co-chairs, is it okay to vote yes or no on this one? Okay. Could all those in favor of adding oversight and to the name, please raise your hands at this time. Okay. And could all those in favor of not adding it and keeping it as Office of Community-Based Police Accountability, please raise your hands at this time. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna come back here, and because that's been voted on, we don't need to ask the questions again. And so the last question is knowing that this is where it's at, is there any desire to revisit any portion of the board name at this point? Can we move on? I'll pass it back over to Facilitator Victoria for the overall document questions.
Thank you. Thank you for your help. That was very complicated to me. Okay, we can continue with the rest of the document.
That is the document.
I think I was gonna say, I think that's it.
Oh, is it document?
It's just
Okay.
a one page, it's just a one
Oh,
page.
it's a one page. Okay, Commissioner Catherine.
So I know it's getting late and don't want to try people's patience, but I do want to be respectful of the people who wanted to think about a way to get oversight in there. So now that we're going back to the board, maybe we should try on community board for police oversight and accountability or something like that, just to see, do we want to try to bring in oversight? I think we voted on not having oversight into the office name. And maybe we voted already on this, but let's just try it, because I think there are definitely people in the group who cared about that. So I want to, and I know Dan was saying maybe we could try to get oversight in one name or the other. So anyway, I guess I just propose that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, I can ask about yes and no. Please raise your hand if you want to add the oversight word to N, the two words, oversight N, to this name of the board. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Please raise your hand if you don't want to add oversight and just leave it Community Board for Police Accountability. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Commissioner Christian, do you vote twice or only on the last one? Only the last one? Okay, thank you. Yeah, 7. Okay. We will leave it as it is. Okay. Thank you. Can we move on? Thank you. Native community oversight. The name of the bureau. I can ask. Okay, I will wait. Okay, all together. I'm gonna ask for all together that you see here. Is there a strong opposition to changing from what it was to us all these proposed changes? Is there a general agreement? Oh, no, I'm sorry. I need to, and we need to move to approving the whole document. I was confused. Let me move to approve the whole document. We already review the values and goals. Now the commission has completed discussion on the document, and next on the agenda is discussing whatever the commission should approve the draft areas of agreement and name and other details. With all the changes we have made today incorporated into the text. There is a potential agreement document that was circulated that gives some context as to this decision. Before seeing if there is a consensus around approving this document, we're going to hear from the public. After that, we will review the PAC. We already reviewed the PAC values and goals, but we can review it again. Finally, we'll ask if members want to make any final tweaks and then ask if they are ready to make a decision. We'll pass for public comments. We ask members of the public to keep their comments to 2 minutes in length and keep their comments focused on the draft document. Please, members of the public, raise your hand in Zoom if you like to be called on. I don't think there's nobody. Okay, I haven't seen any hand. Then I can move on. Thank you. Okay, we already looked at the values and goals, but if any members would like to see it again, please raise your hand. No? Okay. I'm gonna ask the question. Is there a strong opposition to approving the draft areas of agreement on name and other details with all the changes we have made today incorporated into the text? Is there a general agreement around approving this document? Thank you. This document has been approved. Congratulations. We have the names. Yay. Good job, everyone. Good job. Okay, then we're gonna move on the next item in the agenda. Now, oh, garden plot, okay. Oh. Let me see. Do we need to have another public comment? No.
No, just.
Members'
Curiosities, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I do mean it. Okay, now we will go to member curiosities and I will pass it to the co-chairs. Commissioner Catherine?
So I just had a question about whether we have been able to lock down a date for our presentation of our code changes to the council, because I think it would be important as we're going out to the community over the next month with our new community partners to be able to tell people, here are the dates. If you care about this, please come to the city council and join us, because I feel like just watching the events of the last couple of weeks, it was really important that the community showed up, that they knew about what was going on. They cared, they showed up, and they made a difference. And I would really like us to be able to use our meetings over the next month to get the word out. These are the dates. I mean, even if we don't know specific dates, if we could say this Wednesday or whatever, I think that could be really important. So I just put that out there. If we could get a date or at least start including that in our community meetings when we expect this to be in front of the council, I think that could be pretty important. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Catherine. And I will pass it to the co-chair, Casey.
I'm not a co-chair anymore, but
Oh,
so I, along sort of those same lines of seeing what happened lately, and also seeing sort of the article that was sent to us by Commissioner CMOB. I don't think we have the time for this discussion right now, but I'd just like to bookmark whether we want to have a discussion of whether the PAC wants to make any sort of public statement about sort of the statement that was made that they are already considering revising our scope at a point when we have not even had a chance to actually officially propose our proposals yet. I was pretty sort of disturbed and upset by that, and I think that it might make sense to sort of take a public position. I know we're in kind of a politically precarious moment right now because ultimately we want the members of city council to vote for this, and we don't want to necessarily upset the apple cart, but at the same time I think at a time where it seems to be being floated that things that people in Portland voted for should just be kind of overturned, I think as the people who were appointed to doing this, we maybe have a bit of a responsibility to stand up and say, we have done what the people told us to do, and we think that we deserve to have a fair shake to have that heard by the council.
Thank you, Commissioner Casey. And now I will pass it to staff.
Yeah, just to respond to Commissioner Catherine's question, no, looking at somewhere in mid-September, but as soon as there is a date, we definitely put it in all the materials and make sure that community members are able to come and that, you know, staff as well as commission members are able to circulate that date to your networks and make sure everyone's able to be there and express whatever views they have or just to listen. And so it's a work in progress trying to get that date. I'm hoping by next, say Monday-ish, to have at least a range, if not an exact date. To the second question, or I guess just to clarify, the internal processes document, so this is to Commissioner Casey's point, say that the PAC may write statements in support or opposition of policy issues relevant to the purpose and scope of the commission. And so co-chairs could definitely add a discussion item onto a coming agenda to help develop sort of the position of the commission on whatever policy issue, and then it would be drafted and probably come back at the meeting after that. So it could be like next Monday and next Thursday, or something like that, to get a statement out, and co-chairs and whoever could certainly be involved in drafting that as well. I'll pass it back to facilitators. Thanks. Oh, actually, I guess I have the next thing, don't I?
Yes, you have the next.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to do this efficiently. The next item under next steps is the concluding phase work plan review. Sorry. And so we went over this in some detail on June 15th, sorry. And just wanted to circle back to this now. One of these slides was shown at a preceding part of this meeting, but just to get, which is this one, and again, there are two tracks. Ideally, these would have been sequential, but just given the overall project timeline, they kind of have to be in parallel. One is giving members the opportunity based on several inputs, just your own thoughts in the months since the document was originally approved, community input, council feedback, legal review, to adjust or adapt areas of agreement that had previously been approved. Again, areas of agreement are the direction that the commission would like the legal text to go in. Code changes, settlement agreement, etc. That's the blue track, and that all happens in public meetings. The pink track below that is legal consultations, in which are outside legal counsel has begun drafting the code changes section by section, and the legal consultations provide an opportunity for members to give feedback to ensure that the direction in those areas of agreement is reflected in the code changes. And those are happening in the next 2 weeks. Please be sure to read the documents over as you get them and be prepared for those. And those happen, and those will eventually lead to a public draft of the code change, which the target date for that is roughly August 3rd. The overall timeline for the concluding phase, and you can see we're already in the public hearings, or public meetings, legal consultations, etc., is to get in around August 3rd-ish, the final draft of recommendations released, and then to work through the rest of August and eventually approve those. Following that, there'll also be an opportunity for the members to vote if you'd like. It's an optional task to send a report. And many months ago, there was a consensus of the commission that at that point there was an intent to write and give a report with it. So that is definitely something that we're planning for in terms of the project timeline. Within that framework, and this is there's sort of 4 steps that are happening here. They'll take these different sources of input for feedback, which we'll talk about in just a second, and make whatever updates to the areas of agreement that you'd like to, or leave them exactly as they are. Separately, they'll be determining, this is something that's best to go into the code, but doesn't require an amendment to the settlement agreement, whereas this other agreement would require an amendment to the settlement agreement. Maybe this is something that goes into an administrative rule, or it's just a recommendation to the board and that goes in with a report. So just kind of putting things into different buckets at this point. Then there's the legal consultations, which is that actual conversion of the things that need to be legal text, converting it into the legal text. And finally, for both the legal recommendations and the report text, there'll be an opportunity in August to review changes, decide on those, and then eventually approve those documents and send them off to the city council. And just to clarify what these filters and sources of input are, there's the garden plot, if there's anything that you flagged that you wanted to circle back to. There's the council feedback, the work session, and the memo that the council gave on June 9th. There's community input and the input tracker, which you're going to receive. All of this the goal is to get all of this to you by Monday, by the way, of next week. Some of it will be sooner than that. There's using the values and goals to go back and say, this is either something that we missed or something that you feel needs to change in the document to ensure that it fits the values and goals. There's the legal review, and these are the documents that have been sent out with with OLC feedback in the file name. They're comments from outside legal counsel that may help you revise things that either would require a change to federal or state law or in contradiction to it in some way, for example. And then we'll also just note if anything contradicts itself, and I'll give an example of that in just a moment. So that is all designed to be inputs into public meetings. And all of this together, in particular, those legal reviews, there are maybe 30 or 40 documents. Some of them are under a page in length. Some of them are a little bit longer that are going to be sent over the next, or some have already been sent out to read. And so this moment right now is an opportunity to say, just please be prepared for a lot of things to read and be ready for. And please lean on your colleagues and staff and whoever else you need to help if you have any questions or clarifications, as well as, of course, attorneys. So that's sort of the work plan review. And here I will also mention that some of this has already been working on. The garden plot is a little bit broader than just the garden plot, by the way. It's also the final task list. So one thing that staff's been doing is looking at everything that the PAC has been requested to do by anybody, starting with this tab is the charter. So for example, in the charter, it says the final name will be established by city code, and the way you have to fulfill that is including in your code recommendation a name for the board. That's a pretty easy one to use as an example. So obviously the areas of agreement, deciding what the names would be just happened. And then in the code recommendations, you'll see it'll include it in there. And at that point, this box will be checked. And the goal is to ensure that commission members are able to know what was required of them and to ensure that they're able to have their outputs meet all of those. The garden plot also will fall, and that's in a different tab in the same spreadsheet. And finally, one thing that'll be coming up for those of you who may remember the ends of phases 1, 2, 3, or I should say 2, 3, and 4. At the end of the phase, there was an opportunity at those points to revisit the bylaws, revisit the agenda and scope and all that. It's the same idea, except it's for the content substantive items. So an opportunity to revisit access to information, structural oversight, officer accountability, reporting and transparency, board membership oversight staff, transition plan, broader system. And those will be on the agendas of meetings coming up, and members will be asked if they'd like to propose any changes. A couple example changes co-chairs have already flagged. We're not going to take a decision on these today, but just wanted to show them to give an example. In structural oversight, this was flagged while discussing broader system by Commissioner Casey originally. And it's at the very end of the document that it says, the board may officially endorse legislation / policy ideas and have the authority to testify in front of relevant governmental bodies and communicate its policy positions with employees and elected officials at any level of government. That was flagged to potentially include or appointed officials. This is an example of a direction change that is relatively easy to explain. So that's why we're using it as an example. And this is an example of one that of the things that we'll be doing in public meetings that members can decide on whether or not to change. The other one to flag is under broader system, and this was flagged in legal consultations, that under the county and state sections, there are, show on the state side, there are clauses about, paragraphs about maintaining working relationships with law enforcement, as well as cooperating with state courts and prosecutions and providing information where necessary. And that exists under the county part and the state part, but not under the federal part. And so there's a proposal to add effectively the same language, but using federal instead of state for collaborating with relevant law enforcement agencies and collaborating and coordinating to transfer information that's relevant to federal court proceedings. So those are things that'll be the sort of examples of things that you might want to change. There are many other examples that we could give, but these are the ones that have already been turned in effectively or proposed. And so in future meetings, this will be something that will be an agenda item and that the members of the commission can make changes to based off of all those different inputs, the checklist from the city council, their memo, the values and goals, the community input tracker, the discussion group reports, which you'll start getting as well by Monday. And so there's a lot of different inputs, a lot of things to read, and give you the opportunity to read those, reflect on those, and make whatever changes you may choose to make. Any questions on any of that? I know that's a lot of information, trying to be quick, so, but there's a lot of information there. Co-chairs, does that reflect what you wanted to make sure was highlighted today? Commissioner Dan.
Commissioner Dan.
I think the other co-chairs are in the driver's seat.
Yeah, that's what I assumed. This sounds good to me,
Yeah.
but I'm like, are the other co-chairs the ones you're supposed to?
Yeah, in this case, I guess it would be
out with the old boss, in with the new boss. Hi, this is co-chair Dan Handelman speaking, and we did have this discussion earlier, and thank you, yes, staff. That was the idea, to go through those quickly and not to try to vote on them tonight, but just give an idea what we're going to be facing soon. I want to say that when you read the documents that came from legal counsel, unless they've been changed, there are a lot of things that I think, because legal counsel wasn't involved all the way through our discussions, that aren't necessarily legal advice, but it's just like an opinion. And so I just want to caution everybody to read it with that. I think as we've had discussions, as these discussions have started, I think legal counsel's been very open and understanding and hearing where our conversations had come from, so that there may be changes to the changes that are proposed. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's 100% accurate. So I'm going to pass this back over to facilitators to close it out. But before I do, I did want to say, as co-chairs Debbie and Christian didn't know, this does conclude phase 5. And thank you to Debbie and Christian, as well as to co-chair Tim, for all the work that you have done over this time. I'll pass it over to Victoria.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much for your commitment and your passion to serve, and congratulations to the new co-chairs too. Okay, now we're gonna go to the garden plot recap. This is a time for facilitators, co-chair, and staff to summarize any items already brought up today, which didn't fit into today's agenda. We'll recap those items here and use them in developing future agendas or just integrate it to the document. We won't be using this time to add new items, not previously mentioned, or discuss any items, but we will use this list to develop and inform future agendas. I'm gonna ask for the facilitator, Ayomide, do you have anything? No, thank you. Co-chairs? The new co-chairs, the old co-chairs, no? Okay, staff?
Nothing, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much for today's meeting and congratulations. As a reminder, now you can submit advanced public comments to the Police Accountability Commission via web form, voicemail, or postal mail. Thank you to all the members who attended today's meeting and for your contributions today. Thank you also for the interpreters. Finally, thank you to the members of community for attending and for their questions and comments. If you are not already signed up for email updates, please also sign up to receive updates from the PAC. The next meeting on the Police Accountability Commission is gonna be on Monday, July 24 at 6:30 p.m. It's now 9:37. And this meeting is adjourned.